On a Friday morning, I looked at my house, a place I'd lived in for 40 years, and I made a decision. By Sunday night, everything that didn't need to be here was going to be gone. No exceptions. My hands were resting on the clean wood of the kitchen table just like this, but the quiet in that moment was a lie. The rest of the house was loud, loud with clutter, loud with projects I had started, loud with 30 years of accumulated good intentions. My partner, Helen, she just looked at me, gave a slow nod, and said she was going to her sister's for the weekend. She didn't have to say it. We both knew my track record. She thought I'd finally lost my mind. To be honest, so did I, because I knew myself. And I knew I had tried to do this 4 times before. 4 times I had picked a room, filled a single box, and then just stopped. The energy would drain right out of me. Tell me in the comments, how many times have you started to organize and stopped midway? Just give me the number. No judgment. This time was different. It wasn't a sudden burst of energy. It wasn't a New Year's resolution. It was cold and quiet and methodical. The first 4 times I had relied on motivation. I'd wait until I felt like doing it, and that feeling would always abandon me an hour in, usually when I was holding some old photograph or a broken tool I meant to fix. Motivation is a fair weather friend. It's there for the easy start, but it vanishes when you're in the messy middle, when the room looks worse than when you began. This time I didn't have more energy or more time. I had rules, 9 of them to be exact. I wrote them on index cards before I even lifted the first book. In this video, I'm going to give you the 9 rules I created in those 48 hours. Each one exists for a single reason: to beat the very specific, very convincing excuse your own mind is going to give you to quit. It's a brilliant lawyer for the do-it-later party, and I had finally decided to come to court with a better argument. It was late Saturday afternoon. The sun was low, cutting long, dusty shadows across the spare bedroom floor. That room had become my command center, my staging ground, and after nearly 36 hours of nonstop work, my enemy. My back felt like a rusty hinge, and every muscle ached with a deep, grinding protest. And then I saw it. The last box, tucked in the corner like it was hiding. It was just a standard banker's box, sealed with tape that had yellowed with age, brittle to the touch. But on the side, in my mother's careful looping handwriting, were 2 words that stopped me cold: Dad's things. I just stood there for a minute, looking at it. Everything else had been stuff. This was different. This was a place I had avoided for years. As I slid my knife through that old tape, it made a dry, cracking sound, and the air filled with the scent of old paper and cedar. A smell from a life that wasn't mine anymore. A smell that felt like an ending. Inside, nestled between stacks of old letters tied with string, was his silver watch. The leather strap was cracked like dry river mud, and I knew it hadn't ticked in 50 years. I picked it up. The metal was cold against my palm, but the feeling that went through me was a sudden, crushing fatigue. It wasn't in my back anymore. It was in my bones. And a voice bloomed in my head, a voice that was calm and reasonable and so very tempting. "You can stop now, Arthur. You've done enough. This box can wait. Just tape it back up. You'll deal with it next week." And God, I almost did it. I almost put the watch back, almost reached for the tape, almost became the man who fails for the 5th time. But then my eyes caught an index card I'd taped to the wall, Rule number 8. It just said, "Allow the discomfort. Do not stop because of it." I looked at the watch, then at the card, back at the watch. I took a breath, a long, slow one, and placed it in the keep pile. The discomfort didn't go away, but it was no longer in charge. When Helen returned late Sunday night, the house was silent in a way it hadn't been for decades. She walked in, set her bag down by the door, and just stood there taking it all in. She didn't gasp or offer a flood of praise. She just looked. As she walked through the living room, her hand went up almost unconsciously and gave the old family portrait above the mantelpiece a tiny, perfect nudge to the right. It's a habit of hers. A constant, gentle course correction she applies to the world. And watching her do it, I finally understood. Helen doesn't need a system of 9 rules because her entire life is one of small, immediate adjustments. She never lets things get messy enough to require a revolution. Her leaving for the weekend wasn't a vote of no confidence. It was the most profound act of support she could have offered. She was giving me the space to fight this war alone, without an audience, because she knew it was a war with myself. The goal was never to become like her. It was to find a system that finally worked for me. That night, I slept a kind of sleep I hadn't known in years. Deep and dreamless. It wasn't the satisfaction of a clean house. I'd had a clean house before, for a day or two. No, this was different. This was the quiet that comes after a long war. The war wasn't with the books, or the old tools, or even my father's watch. The war was with the part of me that always said, later. The part that said, this is too hard. The part that said, you can stop now, you've done enough. Over those 48 hours, I didn't just empty my rooms. I dismantled the very architecture of my own hesitation, piece by painful piece. The 9 rules I'm about to share with you. They aren't about where to put your things. They are a battle plan. They are the specific step-by-step instructions for how to argue with yourself and for the first time finally win. This isn't about becoming an organized person. It's about becoming a person who finishes what they start. And so the first rule was born not from a desire to be tidy, but from the cold, hard memory of 4 failures. Rule number 1, the unbreakable deadline. In my past attempts, time was a soft, blurry suggestion. I'd start on a Saturday with the vague idea of making progress. But progress is a weak motivator. This time I took out my phone, opened the alarm, and set it for 9 p.m. on Sunday. I chose the most obnoxious, jarring sound it had, the one that sounds like a fire drill. That sound wasn't for waking up, it was for stopping. It was a promise. For 48 hours, that ticking clock was my boss, my partner, and my enemy. It wasn't about finding the time, it was about sealing the exits. The moment I set that alarm, the project became real. It was no longer a wish, it was a scheduled event. You can't negotiate with a ringing bell. But a deadline is useless if you get emotionally derailed on the first turn. My 3rd failed attempt ended before noon on a Saturday. I'd opened a box from the attic filled with my kids' old school projects. I can still smell the dried macaroni and the cheap poster paint. I sat on the floor for 2 hours, lost. That day was over before it began. So I created rule number 4, memories last. This time I didn't start in the attic or the spare room. I started in the laundry room, the most emotionally neutral territory in the entire house. Soap, loose change, a single sock. There are no ghosts in the laundry room. I built momentum on the easy things, the impersonal things. Each small finished task was another vote of confidence. By the time I faced my father's watch on Sunday, I wasn't the same man who'd been defeated by a macaroni necklace. I had a rhythm of success. You have to earn the right to face the hard stuff. With momentum established, the next enemy was deliberation. My first attempt, I spent 45 minutes holding a single blue shirt, debating its future. I imagined a dozen scenarios where I might need it. This was my mind creating legal arguments for keeping junk. So I made rule number 2, 1 question per category. Before I touched a single object, I made a checklist. For clothes, have I worn this in a year? For books, will I honestly read this again? For kitchen gadgets, does this do something another tool already does better? That was it. No nuance, no what-ifs. The process became a simple binary choice. I wasn't judging the object's worth. I was just answering a question. It turned 1,000 emotional negotiations into a quiet, methodical process of ticking boxes. Your mind will invent a story for everything you own. You have to come prepared with a better, shorter story. The hardest things to get rid of, I found, weren't always my own. For 20 years, 3 heavy boxes of my son's college textbooks had been taking up the top shelf of my office closet. Every time I looked at them, a wave of anxiety hit me. What if he needs them? What if he's upset I got rid of them? I was acting like a museum curator for his past. This led to rule number 7. It's not your decision to make. On Saturday morning, instead of agonizing, I took out my phone. I snapped a picture of the boxes, the dust thick on their tops, and sent him a simple text. Need these by next Friday or they're being donated. Love, Dad. He replied 2 minutes later. Donate them. Thanks for checking. 20 years of anxiety solved by a single text message. We carry the weight of other people's memories, but it isn't our job. Of the rules we've covered so far, which one do you think would be the hardest for you to follow? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Once you start making decisions, you have to protect them from your future self, the one who is tired and full of second thoughts. In the past, I'd create a maybe pile, but the maybe pile is a lie. It's a holding cell for things you've already decided to get rid of, but don't have the courage to execute the sentence. This time I made rule number 5. 3 piles, not 2. Before I started, I used masking tape on the spare room floor to create 3 large, distinct zones. I wrote on pieces of paper in thick black marker, keep, donate, trash. There was no physical space for a 4th option. There was no purgatory. An object was in my hand, and then it was in one of those 3 places. By eliminating the middle ground, I forced an immediate final verdict. The maybe pile is where momentum goes to die. You have to remove it from the equation entirely. The most important rule, however, was the one I almost broke, the one that saved me when I was holding my father's watch. Rule number 8. Allow discomfort, don't stop for it. This rule wasn't discovered during the 48 hours. It was created beforehand, forged from the memory of all the times I had quit. I knew that at some point I would hold an object that hurt. I knew my heart rate would rise and that a voice in my head would offer me a very reasonable excuse to stop. And it did. The feeling of that cold silver in my palm was a physical weight, but this time I was ready for it. I stood there. I felt the sadness, I felt the fatigue, and I let it be there. I took a breath, and then I put the watch in the keep pile and picked up the next thing. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to feel it all and keep moving anyway. Feelings don't have to be in charge. The practical counterpoint to that emotional battle is all about speed. My mind is clever. I realized that the longer I held an object, the more time I gave that clever mind to build a case for it. This broken radio could be a fun project. This stack of magazines has an article I wanted to read. These are lies. So I invented rule number 3, the 30-second decision. I established a physical rhythm. Pick up an object with my right hand, the evaluating hand. Ask the one question from my checklist. And before my mind could start its legal defense, the object was in motion with my left hand, the destination hand, toward one of the 3 piles. It felt awkward at first, almost disrespectful to the objects, but it wasn't about the objects. It was about outsmarting my own talent for hesitation. Deliberate, conscious speed is a shield. It protects your mission from your own thoughtful, well-meaning, and deeply unhelpful brain. Of course, there's a moment in the middle of any project like this where everything looks worse. The piles are everywhere, the dust is in the air, and the clean, finished space feels impossibly far away. That moment is when motivation packs its bags and leaves. I knew it was coming. So on Friday morning, before I moved a single thing, I created rule number 9, the before photo. I walked through every room and took a picture with my phone. The flash felt cold, clinical, almost accusatory. The photos weren't for memories. They were evidence. On Saturday afternoon, when I hit that wall, when I was tired and felt I'd made no progress, I pulled out my phone. I looked at the photo of the spare room from the day before, and I saw it. The progress was real. I just couldn't see it because I was standing in the middle of the mess. If you've ever been stopped in your tracks by the sheer overwhelm of a task just right, I know the feeling below. You're not alone. The final piece of the puzzle was about making my decisions stick. I remembered my second failed attempt where I'd filled 2 big bags with clothes for donation. They sat by the front door for a week. Every time I passed them, I'd have a little thought. Maybe I should keep that one sweater. By day 5, I'd pulled 3 things back out. I was negotiating with a past decision. So the last rule was rule number 6, immediate exit. This time, the moment a donation box was full, I didn't just seal it. I stopped what I was doing, carried it directly out to the trunk of my car, and put it inside. The sound of that trunk latch clicking shut was the most satisfying sound in the world. It was the sound of a decision becoming irreversible. Out of sight couldn't just be out of mind. It had to be out of reach. Don't give your future self a chance to veto the hard work you're doing today. So you see, these 9 rules aren't really about organizing. They're a system of fences and gates for your own mind. The practical rules, the deadline, the 3 piles, the immediate exit, they build the fence. They create the structure and make it hard for you to wander off the path. The emotional rules, facing discomfort, starting with the easy things, taking the photo, they teach you how to handle the wild animals that are already inside the fence. Because the clutter was never the real problem. The clutter was just a symptom. The real problem was a lifetime of saying later, a lifetime of letting hesitation win the argument. These rules are not about how to clean your house. They are a script for how to finally win that argument with yourself once and for all. I used to think my house was full of things, just things, old tools, books I'd never read again, clothes from a man I used to be. But I was wrong. It wasn't full of things. It was full of postponed decisions. Every single object collecting dust in a corner, every broken gadget I kept just in case. It wasn't just an object, it was a physical monument to a moment where I chose later instead of now. And when you pile up enough of those postponed decisions, you don't just get a cluttered room, you get a cluttered life. A life where the weight of yesterday makes it impossible to move freely today. Cleaning my house wasn't about creating empty shelves, it was about dismantling that monument piece by piece. It was about finally making space for a new kind of quiet, the quiet that comes when you've stopped arguing with your own past. So now you have the rules, but the rules aren't the point, you are. For years I told myself a story that I was too busy, too tired, that I had to wait for the right time. You know that story, you might be telling it to yourself right now. Here's the truth, you are not out of time, you are out of a deadline, you are not out of energy, you are out of a system. These are not personal failings, they are logistical problems with solutions. The one thing without a solution is waiting for a magical day you'll suddenly feel like doing this. That day isn't coming. You know it. I know it. So here's my challenge. Not tomorrow. Now. When this video ends, stand up, walk to the most cluttered drawer in your house and set a timer for 15 minutes. For those 15 minutes, you use only 2 rules. 30-second decisions and 3 piles. Keep, donate, trash. When that timer rings, you're done. That's it. You don't have to clean the whole house. You just have to prove to yourself that you can start and finish. I'm sitting here now at the same kitchen table. My hands are resting on the clean wood just as they were on that Friday morning when I started all this. But the quiet in the house is different. It's not a lie anymore. It's real. It's earned. That's the feeling I want for you. The goal was never just to have less stuff. It's to reclaim the feeling that this space and the time you have left in it is finally and completely yours. It's to quiet the constant low-grade argument in your own head. So please take the 15-minute challenge, not for me, but for the person you'll be when that timer goes off. And if this story gave you the little push you needed, maybe you could share it with just one other person who you think might need that same push. I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. I'm finding out that at 75, I'm not done figuring things out yet, but for right now, I'm just going to lift this cup and enjoy the taste of a truly quiet morning.